Well, hello, Brand DNA graduate, and welcome to Make Your Brand DNA Make Sense. This online course is designed to help you learn how to leverage your brand DNA by creating multisensory experiences that keep your customers coming back. I'm Suzanne Tulien, co-founder of the Brand Ascension Group, and I want to acknowledge you for your continued efforts at brand elevation. You know, this is a great program to involve some of your key employees if you have them. Getting them more engaged in creating tangible, brand-relevant actions will help them own it and live it and through. So this program is exclusive to and only available to you, the Brand DNA graduate, as you now have the critical information and base knowledge about the development of your brand DNA, which all of these graduate programs really build off of to help you continue to operationalize and implement your unique brand DNA as your business continues to evolve. So in this session, we'll show you some great examples of how brands have used senses to create memorable experiences that have enhanced the perception of their brands, creating distinction and keeping their customers coming back for more. So let's get started. We'd like to kick off this learning session with a quick reminder question. Do you remember from the Brand DNA sessions how many impressions of your brand are formed in the first 7 seconds of customer contact? You know, with all we know about how we experience life through our human senses, how many impressions can we pick up on in such a brief moment? Remember, in the 4th module of Ignite Your Business Brand DNA, we learned a bit about the power of all of our 6 senses and touched on how our customers use these senses to make buying decisions. So the answer to the question is, believe it or not, 11 impressions in just 7 seconds of contact with your brand. This statistic should make you really think about what you do in the first 7 seconds of contact with your customer. Now remember, this is their moment to make many gut decisions about you through all the things that they take in through their senses. So now, with your completed brand DNA, you can make sure your customers and your prospects create positive emotional responses that are congruent to your brand in the first 7 seconds of contact. Because you know what? If you don't define and manage your own brand's experience, your customers will. This means that you can control the overall perception of what you want your customers to walk away with. If you're consciously and proactively designing powerful brand experiences through every facet of the customer's experience. So keep that in mind with this next slide and through the rest of the program. As human beings, we have 3 basic ways of communicating when we're face-to-face. Think about this. We have body language, we have, of course, words, and then there's the tone of voice. Do you think one is more important than the other? Well, there has been some research on these various forms of communication and a lot of debate on whether one is more important than the other. One thing we do know is the 3 forms are essential and apparent when communicating face-to-face. So words, tone of voice, and body language must not only be consistent with one another, they must actually support each other. If not, one may easily cancel out the other. Suppose, for example, I say to you in a friendly tone of voice, I'm really interested in hearing more about what you just said, so tell me more. And at the same time, I'm looking at my wristwatch. So what is your interpretation of that action? Well, neither the positive words or the pleasant tone of voice really matter because one form of communication, body language, canceled out the other 2. And the person receives a confused message. So same thing, if I'm on the phone and I say the same thing to you, but then you hear in the background me typing on the keyboard or something like that, what message does that send? Is the message incongruent with the words we just heard? It's very interesting. So now take a look at your brand DNA, specifically your style attributes, and start keeping these forms of communication top of mind in the first 7 seconds of contact with a customer and throughout the entire interaction. So think of ways to be more congruent with your unique brand style, you know, with what actions, what words, and what tone or pitch best suit that brand style. So you can begin creating really powerful brand-relevant combinations with all 3 ways to communicate to make a very powerful perception on the part of your consumer. Okay? So if we think about what impressions we leave our customers at every touch point through face-to-face or virtual communication, that brings us to a really interesting point by Martin Lindstrom, author of a book called Brand Sense. He says, sensory branding may be the only route back to human-centered environments. So being human-centered is really about being focused on appealing to others through positive experiences and interactions and behaviors that affect our perception and form our actual opinions. You know, as humans, we're emotional creatures, right? And we're highly sensitive to what we take in and interpret through our everyday experiences. This is a key learning point in this session, as we make and often take for granted the simple nuances that occur in each of our interactions with others, such as not making eye contact or looking at your watch, you know, during a conversation. Those are important things to keep in mind not to do. So when you're conscious about creating a unique and congruent brand experience in every area of the business, those who experience you become much more trusting and comfortable with your brand. We know many of us have good intentions, but we have mastered the ability to do it consistently and congruently is the question. Getting clear on your unique brand DNA and infusing it into how you show up through sight, through smell, through taste and touch can be very powerful, differentiating the evolution of your brand, if you think about it. So even though our brand DNA graduates, which includes you and your team of people, are really business owners, you got to think about this. You're also customers at every touch point and in our everyday lives. Here's a fascinating study. We know customers use their senses to collect and analyze information in their decision-making processes. Again, another Martin Lindstrom research study in that book called Brand Sense. There is a real correlation between the sensory memories we activate as a brand within our customers and how our customers create this stronger bond with that particular experience. Although Mr. Lindstrom did not reference the sense of intuition in his study, we believe that this is a very critical aspect to our sensory capability. In fact, intuition could be the collective result of all those other senses. So when you think about your brand as it relates to intuition and each of the other 5 senses, the question is, what is the overall lingering feeling that you intend your brand to have with your customers? And how does that correlate with your current brand DNA, your brand platform, and even your brand promise? So let's explore quick examples from several actually very successful brands and start gleaning how we can actually begin using the senses to enhance the brand experience for your customers. So here's a great example of a brand that leverages the senses and stays congruent and consistent with who they are at every customer touch point. Singapore Airlines has evolved into one of the most respected travel brands around the world. And they have one of the world's actually youngest fleets in the air. They have a network spanning 5 continents and the Singapore Girl as their symbol of quality in customer care and service. So they are highly conscious of leveraging as many senses as possible in their guest experience. And they understand the power of smell. And they have actually created and patented a unique botanical perfume, and they infuse that scent through the cabin of their aircraft and within the steamy hot towels each passenger receives when they come on board. So even the smartly dressed uniformed flight attendants wear this perfume, believe it or not. And it creates a really nice, pleasant, calming effect. And they ensure that sound is also incorporated into their brand by playing very relaxing Asian-themed music. I can almost hear it now, as everyone is actually looking and finding their seat, looking for their seats and putting their gear away and settling in. It makes them very calm. And these flight attendants are very smartly uniformed and highly conscious and very observant of their guests and how they experience the whole cabin environment. And they're very proactive in assisting them in every way possible. You might imagine their brand style attributes. It could be calming, professional, caring, and even observant could be their brand DNA style attributes. This is just one example from many of highly successful brands who have recognized the power they have to leverage the human senses and enhance and affirm their brand's overall promise and experience. So your brand currently may not be as large as Singapore Airlines, but these multi-sensory techniques are not limited to large companies. You can utilize these techniques in the smallest of companies and still be just as powerful. So let's get into examples of a few of these senses a little bit more in detail. We'll start with a powerful sense of sound. And have you ever thought about how your brand sounds? Have you thought about how you can enhance that brand with different tones or different rhythms of music? You know, sound is truly hardwired into our emotional circuits. It's fundamental to building the mood and creating the atmosphere of the brand story that's being told. Many of you have been lucky enough to actually experience the famous Disney brand. The Disney team, you and I know, are masters about controlling the perfect magical experience. You know, they carefully choreograph cheerful music and pipe it through the entire park. So they can actually control and manage the brand experience, rain or shine, because you never know when the real birds will actually be singing, right? So a study reported in BrandSense was also done on the music tempo actually in restaurants. What type of music tempo, fast or slow, resulted in an average 29% increase in the dining bill per customer? Think about that. It actually resulted in a slower tempo. And why do you think that is? Well, because slower music actually relaxes the diners and they end up ordering more, maybe another glass of wine or even a dessert, and they hang around a little bit longer. So that's a great interesting study about how powerful sound can be. And here is another interesting example of the power of sound in affecting the behaviors of a city. In Mornington, Pennsylvania, Australia, they wanted to decrease the crime rate within their city, mostly occurring after nightfall. And instead of beefing up security guards and security alarms, they decided to utilize some sound therapy and pipe in classical music on every block within the city. Imagine the sounds of Mozart and Brahms and Beethoven flooding the streets. And guess what? Sure enough, within 1 week, the town reported a dramatic decrease in crime. And it was so successful that the main train station in Copenhagen, Denmark, adopted the same approach, as did the Port Authority bus terminal in New York City. So when you think of your brand sound, think of the brand's collective tone of voice, your office environment, the telephone message. If your website incorporated sound, what genre of music would it be? What about your radio and TV ads? What does quality sound like in your brand's industry? Think about that. Again, these are just, a few quick examples to get your mind thinking of your own brand sound. Now let's keep moving with some other sensory examples. Let's move into sight. Now, sight, we can probably guess, is the most seductive of all the senses. It often overrules the other senses and has the power to really persuade us against all logic sometimes. Think about the time you just finished a fabulous meal and are stuffed to the gills. And then guess what ultimately happens? The visually mouth-watering dessert cart comes rolling up. And talk about sight overruling the other senses. In fact, believe it or not, 83% of the information we as human beings actually collect in our memories, how they're built, we retain those from the things we receive visually. So what are our customers seeing and remembering when experiencing your brand? Think about that. We want you to think about performing a visual audit of your brand. This audit helps you determine how consistently your brand symbols, the colors, and styles are actually showing up through your marketing materials, your signage, your website, through your offices, maybe your retail environment, products and services. A great example, again, is from Charter Media, one of our Brand DNA graduate clients. They are doing a great job of really operationalize their brand visually into their culture and have done a phenomenal job of working with the senses to bring their brand alive. So what did they do in the area of brand visuals? Well, They decided to update their corporate logo to really better reflect their brand attributes when they completed that brand DNA template. Then they worked on a new website to reflect their brand DNA style and value attributes, and tying that into an internal branding campaign for their associates with an inspirational posters and official graphic standards manual expressing to all associates how, when, and where to use the brand's logo correctly and how, of course, not to use it. And these guidelines really help everyone to get on the same page and manage the brand's visual consistency, creating repetition, recognition, and trust in their market space. So next they decided to enhance their visual presence within their internal offices, creating a hip and creative look and feel and staying real true to the brand color scheme by just creating some accent walls and fun things like that. And then finally, the funnest thing they did was they introduced Elena E3, and she is their brand spokesperson, representing and communicating brand relevant information to their teams nationwide at the internal level. So you think, what are these results then? What's really happening to this company? Well, they have greater brand cohesiveness internally, better and more consistent visual brand identity internally and externally, and their tightening of the brand awareness within the culture is real powerful, and that's a better, more solidified, relevant representation to their customers. It all boils down to that external experience, doesn't it? So the question becomes, do you have a formal graphic standards guideline that really dictates how, when, and where your corporate identity shows up? Do you know what your specific logo fonts are? Do you happen to, have this information readily available? I want to pop up some questions that are key. Again, a formal graphic standards guideline for the brand to adhere to. Do you know what your logo fonts are? Again, PMS colors are important, and how are you using those particular fonts to be consistent in other collateral pieces? Do you know what specific PMS colors or color builds are of your logo design so that you know how to paint your offices or to create other experiences for your customers that are relevant to those colors? And are your colors and fonts utilized in your office decor and every piece of collateral, in your website, obviously, and everything else representing your brand? So these are some powerful areas to think about and begin enhancing. I hope the cogwheels are turning and that you really consider getting your employees, if you have them, engaged in this brand elevating task. This could be very powerful for them. So let's think about this. How does an insurance company like Esurance add a more visual experience to their customers? Well, they got super creative and developed a way for the customer to log in and actually watch their car being repaired and have a dialogue with a repair technician. Now, this is truly innovative. So how can your brand capitalize even on the power of the Internet to get your customers more involved with the brand? Think of all those different ways. Now, let's keep moving here. This is a really interesting sense. Have you ever thought about how your brand should smell? Smell is one of the most powerful memory-enhancing devices that we have as human beings, and it's the most persuasive of all the senses. Our olfactory bulbs located in our noses communicate directly to our limbic and midbrains, which house our long-term memories. So it's reported that more than 20% of consumers say that the smell of food is more important than the actual taste, believe it or not. So another interesting fact for those of you who might be marketing to kids and teens, because they are reported to actually have a sense of smell that is 200% keener than that of adults in their 40s, believe it or not. So remember the story in the Brand DNA coursework and the Brand DNA or the Brand Sense book from Martin Lindstrom, where two identical pairs of Nike running shoes were placed in two separate but identical rooms. One of the room was infused with the mixed floral scent, and the other wasn't. And the consumers' tests were actually inspecting the shoes and in each room and then answered a questionnaire. Remember that? Well, they overwhelmingly, by a margin of 84%, preferred the shoes displayed in the room with the fragrance, believe it or not. Additionally, these consumers estimated the value of the scented room shoes to be $10.33 higher on average than the pair in the unscented room. So again, this is an amazing study that shows how powerful our senses can be in the process of decision making. So how can your brand use smell to enhance the customer experience? So we're moving right along here, and this is actually one of my favorite senses is taste. How can you add taste to your brand? Well, here's a very unusual example. A home nursing care organization called The Nurse Next Door has gotten creative with their brand style attributes of being humble and having humility when caring for their elderly customers. So they use the sense of taste to establish a traditional humble pie flavor to its brand. And any time that they actually make a mistake or they get negative feedback from one of their customers or one of their patients, they promptly deliver a homemade humble pie with a handwritten apology note stating that what they have done to actually resolve the issue. So the president of this organization actually states that within a year she spent about $1,200 in humble pies and estimates she secured an additional $90,000 worth of business because of their efforts in creatively really resolving these mistakes. So these are some simple and creative examples, again, of how brands can leverage the senses to really enhance the perception and to affirm what we stand for in our DNA. And at what levels of your customer touch points, think about this, could you really begin to introduce any one of these senses, in the sense of taste even, in the customer experience of your brand? So remember to make it relevant to that DNA. Always go back to your DNA template and make it relevant. So now we want to get your creative minds thinking a little bit. In the field of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, touching something is used as a powerful tool to create an anchor of memory. So in effect, a touch on something like leaving a little physical is something really like leaving a physical reminder of your presence, your affection, or your respect. So, or a specific feeling of a product, think about weight, or a texture, or even the softness or hardness of a chair can actually be consciously managed to reflect your brand's DNA. So one company added weight to their remote control products, which created perception of quality from the consumer and created competitive advantage from their competitors. And remember this, Coca-Cola has created powerful differentiation through their unique shape and texture of this bottled beverage. You could literally close your eyes and hold this bottle and know what you're drinking. So enhancing the sense of touch in your brand can start with shaking hands with your customers, to creating a way for them to test drive your product or service, to actually feel the product themselves, and being more conscious of the sense of touch for you as a brand and how it relates to your brand can be paradigm shifting for your customers. So, we're physical beings after all. So we all have skins that are chock full of nerves, right? So touching and being touched brings us closer to each other and can bring your customers closer to your brand. So from the book, again, The Experience Economy, just again, a great reminder here of this particular quote from Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. Experiences are events that engage individuals in an inherently personal way. They actually occur on an emotional, physical, intellectual, or even spiritual level. And we encourage you to think about how you can engage your customers in a personal way that is so distinctive in how you deliver on your brand. And we also have a recommended book list in your workbooks from your DNA to provide you even more support and examples in building your internal brands through these multisensory experiences. So let's get a sense of how conscious branding works in a business. We'll work with a powerful sense of sound with this particular example. We're going to get you thinking here. Imagine you have invested in a car dealership and are selling luxury hybrid cars, or that particular luxury hybrid car brand. Your brand is really all about sophisticated, smart elegance, down to the specific and meticulous details in your service. Okay, so given this scenario, we want you to get super creative. Now put yourself in this particular car dealership environment where you can really incorporate some sensory experiences into your customer interaction. So go ahead and pause this recording and answer the following questions based on the brand's platform given above. Then come back and see our example answers. So go ahead and pause the recording now, and then we'll be back to reveal the answers. Well, welcome back, and we hope you had fun in generating some ideas for these hypothetical brand questions. Now let's reveal our specific answers to give you kind of a head start. All right, so for the first one, what genre of music would you choose as most brand relevant with this particular brand platform, sophisticated, smart, elegance? Well, we would tie in live classic jazz music for the brand because of its sophisticated feeling. And on question 2, we'd pipe in music through our inside showroom, throughout the parking lot, and provide a complimentary mini iPod stocked with the live jazz music, and even short tips on car maintenance on this iPod, all just for taking a test drive with us. That's what the consumer gets. And then finally, to add more touch experiences to the brand, we would make sure that there was an elegant, comfortable seating area in the showroom for our primary buyer to sit in during the transactional process, as well as providing the new car keys maybe on a real nice leather keychain embossed with the brand logo. And finally, we were thinking about providing a nice leather portfolio for all the paperwork that you get when you purchase a car. You know, this is a real powerful, very quality, relevant takeaway for the consumer. So those are our ideas. I'm sure you've come up with some more, but this just kind of gets you in the driver's seat, so to speak, and test drive another company before you start working on your own brand. So hopefully this is really starting to get you thinking about all the different ways that you can really show up in one or two different areas or customer touch points and build that brand multisensory experience. Very powerful. So let's continue. Now you're ready to actually create your own multisensory branded experiences that are true and authentic to your own unique brand DNA. So you too can benefit from the senses and think about the Nike study that we talked about and price of the same shoes and the price being higher in the scented room versus the non-scented room, and the nurse next door and the humble pie and how they leverage smell to create the distinction of that saved them a significant amount of dollars in taste and smell, and all these different ways that these companies have showed you how they're doing it. And it's going to be different for you just because your brand DNA is different. So download the multisensory exercise and get started now, or schedule some dedicated time this week or next week to work on this. You can even focus on just one of the senses. Try one a week, even one a month, and gradually build on creating a layered sensory experience. This can really change the way your brand communicates to your customers and employees and create a huge differentiation and competitive advantage. So there are two parts actually to this exercise. Real quickly, I'll run through them. Part A will get you thinking really creatively on how you can build a consistent sensory experience through all the senses that matches and reaffirms your DNA. You'll review each sense area and brainstorm ways to apply your brand DNA through those senses. And we challenge you to find ways to leverage all 6 senses if you can. And remember, the more senses you can leverage, the greater the opportunity to create that stronger bond of your brand with your customers. And then Part B will challenge you to begin applying the senses through memorable and consistent actions both internally and externally. And this will really enhance your brand so that it really becomes more experiential through all the creative ways that you can express it. And this, is a great, again, activity to really engage your employees in helping the brand invent its own congruent multisensory experiences. Have fun with it. Get creative and step outside of the box. The more minds you actually have on this, the more creative you can actually get in making sure that you're really touching every area that you can possibly touch. So, we're sure that this activity is going to get you thinking differently and creatively about the evolution of your brand. So remember to make sure your sensory experiences are relevant to your DNA. That's what's really powerful. And then done consistently to gain the trust from your customers. And we can't let you go without reminding you of one thought-provoking statement. In the absence of a distinctive brand experience, price becomes the default in your customer's purchase decision. That's why we're here today. This is why we're doing all this. Because as business owners, we want our customers to value our brand and not just based on price, right? So completing your sensory exercise and actioning it will help you develop and sustain that value exponentially, okay? So again, we want to truly thank you and congratulate you for continuing to elevate your brand and leverage your unique brand DNA. Remember to share any one of your invitations and experiences with other Brand DNA Masters on our exclusive Brand DNA graduate group on LinkedIn. Don't forget to join and participate actively. We look forward to really watching your brand elevate through discussion groups on LinkedIn. Revisit our Brand DNA graduate products page for more powerful 1-hour, $99 workshops to help you and your team continue leveraging your brand DNA. And for those of you who have employees, consider our customizable Living Our Brand activity guide to help engage your employees into understanding, acting, and living your brand DNA from the inside out. And we're going to leave you with this particular question and answer. Why is branding important? Because your brand is your business. All right? So again, congratulations, everyone. We appreciate your attendance in this session. We hope you've learned a lot, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Take care. Talk to you soon.